Welcome back, it's Paula here. We're working through a mystery bag series at the moment, and I have done one video prior to this about the contents of the mystery bag for this new catalogue release. And today we're going to talk about one of the tools that was in that bag and how you can make use of it. So I included this gorgeous little stamp set called Where Your Heart Leads. It is one of those sort of stamps that I can see very useful for a beautiful card, but also a delightful sentiment for a scrapbook page. So it's one that's kind of got the dual purpose. It is in your book on page 50 and 51. You can see how it's being used. We've got the stamp set up here at full size, and we can see it used on a few cards over here. So let's just recreate this gorgeous little card quickly and show you how it's done. So if you're looking at your mystery bag inspiration sheet, if you're one of the ones that chose to get a mystery bag, you'll see that it's project number 6 that we're talking about at the moment, sitting over in that side. So in your bag, you will have your stamp set and you'll have this little selection of bits and pieces. So what you're going to create is either a card front, or it can be like a little sentiment embellishment piece to put onto your page, a bit like a pocket card. So that's what we're working with to begin with. So included in this little pack is a piece of our watercolour paper. Now the watercolour paper is something we've had in our range for a little while. It comes like this. It's sort of A4-ish size with quite a few sheets inside there. There's 10 sheets, I think, all up. And on the paper you have a slightly more rough side, which is that real true watercolour effect, and then a more smooth side. It is a slightly creamy shade, not quite pure white. If I put that against this, you might see there's a slight difference. But it works beautifully whether you're using White Daisy or French Vanilla, or any of the different shades that we've got in our range. It's slightly thicker and it can handle water quite well. So to do that beautiful little card, let's just bring back the image. Oh, actually, no, I've got the real one here that I've put together. What you need to do first is prepare the background. So on the watercolor piece, I'm going to get a water brush. I find this the easiest way. Get a little water brush, and you can either use watercolor paints or you can use your ink pads, which is literally what I did. So I just grabbed 3 different shades of ink and made a little ombre effect. So we are going from melon at the top, periwinkle in the middle, and pine at the bottom. Now I tend to use my all-purpose mat for this job because it's really easy to wipe clean and you've just got that nice smooth surface to work with. So literally all we do to create that background is to squeeze our ink pads together so that we've got a little bit of ink sitting in the lid. Then we're going to pull our little water brush onto that, try and pick up some of that colour. If your water brush isn't very wet, you might want to squeeze a tiny little bit in there. And then you're just going to do a little bit of a wash in the background. Just as simple as that. And as you go, you can always squeeze a bit more water, or you can close your ink pad and bring a little bit more colour in if you need to. I'll just do one more little go here. Bring a little bit of water through like I did there and make it spread out that little bit more. So that's our first colour. Then I grab my cloth, give the ink pad lid a quick wipe over and close it up. Now because your brush has been used on a colour, I tend to grab a scrap piece of paper. I've got a very old scrap piece lying around. I give it a little squeeze off, make sure there's no colour left coming through, and then I'm ready to go to a new colour. So I'm now going to go on to periwinkle. You can choose any colours in your stash at all. It does not have to be these shades. I'm just going to pull this one in, get a little bit more colour off there. And it's looking rather lovely. I do love periwinkle. It's kind of got a hint of purple in there, but it's a bluey purple. A little bit like a shade we used to have actually, a bluebell, but it's a little bit more purple than that. Wipe that one clear, and now we've got one last colour, which is pine. Once again, I'm going to bring in my scrap piece of paper and just squeeze off to make sure there's no colour coming off that water brush. Squeeze my piece together. Being a darker colour, this will lift up a lot easier. And I can pop this one in. You can see it's a lot darker. Oh, we've got a bit of water going on there, so it's spreading. Let's just try and make that look a bit more sideways. There we go. Pull a little bit more for the bottom. And that's our base done for this card. Once again, I'll clean off my water brush so it's nice and ready for another project. Water brushes are fabulous like this. They're a very inexpensive tool, but you can make use of all those other tools you've got, like your different ink pads or your re-inkers or your watercolor paints or what have you, and do lots of really fine coloring in with them. So they are perfect. So once we've got this ready, obviously we need to let that dry off. You can get your heat tool and give it a bit of a blast, and that will dry off a lot quicker. But once it is not feeling cold anymore, then you know it is dry, and that's when you can go ahead, pull out your stamp set and do a nice solid stamp on the top. Now, I actually pulled out one of the lines that says "You love, be who you are, do what you love, go where your heart leads you." So I've emphasized that by just stamping that again in black onto a separate piece of white daisy and trimming it out by hand and pasting it over the top. So that's one way that you can kind of make something stand out a little bit with your sentiment. And just to finish off, in your pack, you've got your little mat to mat around the edges. You've got your strip in here, and I've actually used my sandpapering tool. You'll see the white core is showing up. I've used my sandpapering tool just to pull out that white core. And then I already pre-stamped for you a beautiful background. And that background has come from the other stamp on the same page, down the bottom here. And it is called Leafy Background, which I have used on there. I did have the leafy background. Here it is, there's the real stamp. And this one here, I just inked up with periwinkle and stamped onto a sheet of periwinkle and given you a nice little background to put your card or your embellishment piece together with. Once again, I did sandpaper back that periwinkle piece as well to give a little white edging. Nice and easy, a few little melon sequins which I've included to finish off, and you've got a beautiful finished little piece of embellishment or a card front that you can use. I hope you found that really easy. Now we're going to go on to another little look you can achieve with this stamp set. So we've done the one there, and I'll set that to one side. But I've also used the stamp set on a scrapbooking page, which I will show you here. So the scrapbooking page is a double pager, as a celebration, but as you can see on the left hand side in this space I have also stamped it, but this time I have ombre'd it, so it's got a graduation of colour. So to achieve this, all you simply need to do is bring in a stamping mat, now that we're going to do some stamping, and then you also need to bring in some 3 colours that you think ombre together nicely. So I have got the sapphire, the lagoon, and I'm also going to bring back the periwinkle. So we're going from light to dark, and I've got my stamp on a block ready to go. Now I also, to get a better image, I like to pull out, if I can find my base, here it is, I like to pull out the mat underneath the stamp set as well, particularly with a stamp like this which has got lots of different layers. Or there was a bit of dampness on there. Hopefully that won't ruin our effect. So what we do in terms of doing an ombre effect is we start with our lighter shade, periwinkle, and I just actually literally stamp up the entire, or ink up the entire stamp. So everything is covered. Because it's a light colour, you can do it this way. Then I'm going to my mid colour, and I'm just going to ink up part way up. And then I'm just going to go back and forth a little bit to make it a little bit gradual between the one below, which was our lighter periwinkle, and this one. And then I'm going to go to my darkest shade of all, which is sapphire. I've still got my old style ink with sapphire. It just keeps going and going and going. And I'm again going to ink up part way, overlapping with what we had done with the lagoon. And it's ready now to be stamped onto my piece. Hold it down, make sure there's some transfer of colour, because this is quite a big sentiment with different layers. I do like to be a little bit careful. Hopefully we've got it going beautifully. Oh, it was a little bit tight over there, but you can see the ombre effect. It's gorgeous. So now I know the stamp does that. I would be very cautious, as you can see. There's a little bit of ink on these pieces here. So when I pressed down particularly hard to pull up the ink, I needed to come back and just wipe that little piece off before stamping down. But that is a beautiful effect. I love the ombre effect with stamp sets, particularly word stamp sets. So that's another option with this fun stamp that you've got in your collection. Now I do have one other idea for you. So my final idea is to use it on a scrapbook page, but instead of it being a sentiment in its own right, as I have shown you here, I'm actually now going to use it more as a background. So let me just tidy up my space here a little bit. And I'm going to pull in a strip of paper, and this is actually one of my favourite colours at the moment, called Seabrook. So that's the light side, that's the dark side. I'm actually going to work with the dark side, and I'm going to bring in Mist, which goes really nicely with Seabrook. And I'm going to use the stamp set, just give it a quick wipe off. I'm going to use the stamp set to create a background piece of paper for a layout. So I'll just stamp that off so it's not wet. Hopefully we're good to go. Ink it all up with our mist. And once again, I might just tuck, given that I'm on this table as well, I'm going to tuck this piece underneath to help me get the best image I can with the stamp set. Make sure it's all inked up, just a bit wary of that little edge now, just see if I can check there's no ink on there. And then I'm just going to ink this right over to the left up top. Now I've chosen to go mist so that it is quite a prominent sentiment. You could just go Seabrook on Seabrook to be a really subtle background, and that certainly would look beautiful as well. So this time though, I did want the sentiment to stand out because it is a lovely sentiment. Just going to come to the side a little bit so it's not perfectly under itself. And now I'm going to stamp it again. It does seem to pick up a little bit of that edging like it did the first time, so I'll just wipe it before we stamp it again. That's going to come over here. And one more stamped up piece. Wipe off that little edge bit. And we'll do the final stamp a little bit to the side. I love Mist and Seabrook together. It's such a cool colour combo. Very neutral colour too. It doesn't really matter whether this is going to be a boys, girls, family, I don't know, garden. It doesn't really matter. They're good colours that work together. So that there now has created a nice little patterned strip of paper, which I'm going to put together onto a layout that I'm going to design in front of you. So the layout is going to be actually for my daughter who does textiles at school. She's pretty clever with her work, and this was from year 9. She made a couple of little projects which I loved, which I haven't yet scrapbooked. So I've just got the one photo for the left hand side, but as you can see, it's kind of cute there. She made herself a little frog, and that was all out of recycled materials. She had to bring in old clothing and things and make something from it. And then she had to design her own tote bag, which she's got a very, very cool sort of abstract image on there. It's quite fun. So those are the couple of things that she made in year 9, which I wanted to scrapbook. So that's going to go on this page. So I'm going to pause the video and speed it up now, and you will be able to see this page come together. So we're going to be using the mix-ins that are now available in this latest catalogue. It has got some beautiful shades in it, and the one I'm playing on most is the Seabrook textured piece. However, I do also bring in the wood grain look in a minute, which you'll see as well. Now, the textured piece that I had was just a scrap, so I had to extend it a little bit. So I did actually use another stamp set that was in the recent sale called Parisian Notes to do a little bit of background stamping down the side. Now, for my title, as this was a textiles project that she completed, I thought I'd use the really fun Moxie alphabet die set with stamp, a coordinating stamp. So I cut out the textiles in the white daisy, and now I am stamping with the mist ink to go over all those different letters. I love this alphabet for quite a sort of fun, playful effect, and the fact that when you stamp on it, you get that beautiful white border around the edge really makes it look like a doubled up sort of, I suppose, matted alphabet. which is a lot quicker than having to cut out multiple sets of the same letters and doing that matting yourself. So I do like the effect that this brings, and because it has uppercase and lowercase, all the vowels are lowercase and all the rest of the consonants and things are uppercase, I tend to put them together in a bit of more of a overlapped higgledy-piggledy way, which you'll see a little bit later. Now here's the wood grain paper that I've bought in. And I decided to do a little bit of dovetailing. I wanted to have a platform for my photo to sit on. So I've layered up the two sides of the wood grain, and now I'm bringing in my T-square ruler and using the stitching guide on it with my piercing tool to do a bit of a zigzag effect. So I've punched that all the way across and then pulled out some embroidery thread that was very similar to mist in colour. So I'm going to use 3 strands of my embroidery thread, and I'm going to do the zigzaggy effect and leave a little bit of thread showing so that it's just got that feeling of textiles on the page. So I'm just showing you here how I got started. I made sure that there was a bit of thread on the top, and then really from the front all I'm doing is filling in all the zigzag. So it gives a really cool effect of stitching on the page, which is just what we need for this theme on the page. So I'm going to do that off camera, and now I'm just going to start to put some of those elements together. So this is where I do that bit of overlapping with my title letters, and then I start to think that I need a few more textures behind. So pulling out the pocket cards to go with corset, I found some really neat little textured pieces that had that Seabrook effect and mist effect, and then I pulled in some Seabrook glitter paper as well as a bit more of that wood grain paper. This just gives that little bit more elements of texture to the page. I did cut out some of the flowers that went with the paraffin notes, but later you'll see I didn't actually use those on the right hand side. They weren't quite fitting the theme. Then though I got really fun with the fun old crafting shapes die cut set where you can create your own little scissors, buttons, needle and thread, lots of different elements. I've made a little pencil, a little ruler. I've actually used our holographic paper for some of those shiny elements. I love how that picks up the light, and it also gives that more metallic feel. So that's what I've done with my needle and my ruler and the blade part of the scissors. Now with the little pencil, I've overlapped 2 shapes to give a little white sort of eraser and edge to it. So I've gone ahead and stuck all those pieces down. You can sort of see how it's come together. Just for my journaling, I found another pocket card that had some stitched lines on it. So I'm pulling those pieces in, and I'm going to finish off the journaling off camera just so that you know that it has been done. Also, I pulled in a grey journaling pen to do the little buttons, the little stitching over the buttons. I loved how this came together. The beautiful stamp on the left-hand side gives that intention of the sentiment, be who you are, do what you love. And then, you know, you've got a beautiful card finished as well. I hope you enjoyed these projects.